What's going on, guys? It's K-Dog coming back at you with another episode of Do You Remember? This is episode number 4, as promised. And this one is going to be on Miss Elizabeth and her final day. Elizabeth in many cases, Miss Elizabeth was almost too good to be part of pro wrestling. Elizabeth kind of came on the scenes very slowly, like almost accidentally. She was, for those that don't know who Elizabeth Hewlett is, that being her real name, um, Elizabeth was a valet. Most people will associate Miss Elizabeth to the late Randy Macho Man Savage. They were actually married in the late 80s, or excuse me, the early 80s, and then I think they were married for a while before they got divorced. But Randy Savage actually brought Miss Elizabeth into pro wrestling as his valet, and they she would accompany him to the ring, and like basically be eye candy for the guys per se. But Randy Savage had a very dark and very jealous side. Like he didn't like Elizabeth being ogled, and when you have a woman like that, people are going to stare. And I mean, but it's one of those, if you're a normal sane individual, that has trust in your companion, shit like that you don't have to worry about. They actually turned the Savage Elizabeth wedding into its own angle. We'll talk about that here in a minute. But Miss Elizabeth is also responsible for the formation of the Mega Powers, Hulk Hogan and Randy Savage, WrestleMania 4. Brought them together. My first recollection of Miss Elizabeth was during Randy Savage's Intercontinental run in 1986. He'd have a match at WrestleMania 2 with George the Animal Steel, and they portrayed that George the Animal Steel was infatuated with her, so she would kind of distract him and basically help Randy Savage win, his matches and whatnot. But I think the big thing about Miss Elizabeth that most people remember is the formation of the Mega Powers at WrestleMania 4. Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant have the match that Andre wins the belt, tries to give it to Ted DiBiase. They strip Andre of the title. They have the tournament that Randy Savage would win at WrestleMania 4. During the final match against Ted DiBiase, Elizabeth goes backstage, gets Hulk Hogan to kind of eat, because Ted DiBiase, the Giant, out there, and that's kind of how this team forms, if you will. And Elizabeth would basically be their valet, be their manager. This would kind of go on. SummerSlam, the first ever SummerSlam event in 1988. She actually got on the apron and took her skirt off to distract Ted DiBiase, which led to the Mega Powers getting the victory. She also played a part in the demise of the Mega Powers in 1989. Hulk Hogan and Randy Savage are in a tag team match against Akeem and the Big Boss Man, a.k.a. the Twin Towers. The main event in February of 1989. Savage gets thrown through the ropes, takes out Elizabeth inadvertently. Hogan picks up Elizabeth, takes her to the back. Once that happens, that's kind of what cements the Savage's heel turn. The Mega Powers split up because Savage is like, if you wanted my belt, all you had to do is that. And, Elizabeth is kind of caught in the middle. She's even caught in the middle at WrestleMania 5, where the Hogan-Savage match takes place, to where, Savage ends up, they basically escort Elizabeth, like, she's removed from ringside or whatever. Hogan would end up winning the match. Elizabeth would kind of take a little bit of a hiatus after WrestleMania 5. She would resurface at WrestleMania 6 as the quote-unquote crown jewel for Dusty Rhodes and Sapphire. They had a mixed tag team match against the Macho King Randy Savage and Sensational Sherry, which basically became Savage's new valet. Elizabeth would physically get involved in the match at WrestleMania 6, costing Savage and Sherry the match. And then I mentioned that at the start of the video, they would turn the Savage-Elizabeth marriage, even though they were already married by this time, into an angle where they got married at SummerSlam in 1991 as the main event. That was actually the match made in heaven, which would jumpstart the Randy Savage Jake the Snake feud, because at the reception, Elizabeth opens up a present that contains a King Cobra, and then that, as I said, that kickstarts the Randy Savage, Jake the Snake Roberts feud that ultimately would happen. But Savage and Elizabeth would divorce mainly because of Savage's jealousy and whatnot. And then my next recollection of Elizabeth really didn't stem until when she eventually would go to WCW. She'd actually reunite with Randy Savage on camera. And then she would turn on Randy Savage at Super Brawl 6. She would actually help Ric Flair win the WCW championship at that event. And then for some odd reason, she was aligned with Ric Flair and Woman, a.k.a. Nancy Benoit. And from there, Elizabeth would just kind of, pal around Flair for the longest time. She would eventually join the NWO. At first begrudgingly, but then almost became like a willing compadre, if you will, of the NWO. And then once all that when ran its course per se, she would wind up aligning with Lex Luger. And Lex Luger, which I'll get to him in just a little bit as well. I think Lex Luger's a piece of shit. I kind of blame him for not being directly responsible for Elizabeth's death, but like I said, I'll talk about him toward the end of the video. And that's my freaking plastic under my chair. But so yeah, she would end up aligning with Lex Luger in I believe it was like late '98, early '99, because they would have they would end up having a match at Super Brawl 9 pitting Rey Mysterio. I don't remember, honest to God. I don't remember who his partner was, but they took on Kevin Nash, maybe Luger. But anyway, they have a mask versus hair match, Rey's mask versus Elizabeth's hair. That ultimately, Mysterio would get unmasked at that event. But she would pretty much align herself with Lex Luger the rest of her time. Elizabeth would actually get really physical. Why is my phone constantly? I don't know why my comments aren't posting up, but somebody had commented, but I don't see it on my screen. I'll look afterwards. But anyway, in any event, she would align herself with Lex Luger pretty much for the rest of 1999. Luger would suffer an injury to his, I think it was his biceps or his triceps, one of his arm muscles. And Elizabeth would kind of, at the time, her and Luger were actually dating. And which is kind of not great in its own right, because Elizabeth was remarried at the time and Luger was married. They were having an affair. And Elizabeth just kind of quietly, as quietly as Elizabeth came into pro wrestling, she left pro wrestling toward the end of 2000. I'm sorry, I think it was in the summer of 2000. Her contract expired. They just never renewed it. And, she disappeared. She was gone. And then, that takes us to the next time we hear Elizabeth in the news is on May 1st, 2003, the day she died. She died in the townhouse that she shared with Lex Luger. I mentioned that they were having an affair and they had a place together. And Lex Luger talks about this, and he, and this is kind of what pisses me off. If you look up Lex Luger's interview with the Hannibal TV, which I highly recommend, the Hannibal TV, great channel, a lot of in-depth wrestling interviews. If you really want to get to know a lot of like wrestlers on a more personal level, Hannibal does just a fantastic job with interviewing wrestling personalities and pro wrestlers. But anyway, it pisses me off watching the where he talks about Miss Elizabeth, because it's like Luger doesn't give two shits. You can tell he doesn't give two shits about it or about her. And that's my doctor's appointment, my confirmation for my doctor's appointment. But Luger would have he had all sorts of drugs in this townhouse, and Elizabeth mixed drugs with alcohol, and so many of these professional wrestlers, man, they take these little white fucking pills and they down them with alcohol, which is one of the worst things you could ever do in your life. You want to freaking pop pills to get high? Okay, whatever, to each their own. You want to fucking drink, booze and get drunk? More power to you. But for God's sakes, man, don't mix them because it will kill you. It will stop your heart. And that's exactly what happened with Miss Elizabeth. Miss Elizabeth died on May 1st, 2003, due to a accidental drug overdose. She mixed some painkillers with some muscle relaxers and mixed them with vodka. Luger talks about the night that she died, that they were at home, they were watching a movie. Luger went to get up to make them some snacks. In the midst of, they were popping pills, they were drinking. In the midst of all this, Elizabeth went unconscious, and Luger thought because it was like 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, she just fell asleep. And then when he brought the snacks or whatnot, Elizabeth still wouldn't move. And that's when he realized she was unconscious. He called 911. They take her to the hospital where paramedics tried to work on her there at the scene. They take her to the hospital where she ultimately was pronounced dead. And, like I said, I find Lex Luger to be a piece of shit, for having all the drugs he had in that townhouse. He actually got arrested because he had a number of illegal drugs in his home. In that interview with Hannibal TV, he talks about how he didn't, he had like 6 months worth of fucking drugs in that freaking townhouse. What the hell? Why do you have that much shit? But it's a sad state of affairs. Like I said, it's just watching the interview, it just chaps my ass because, like I said, you can just almost tell just the way Luger talks, like he don't give two shits. It's like, oh, okay, whatever. Luger would end up getting divorced from his wife, due to the whole affair with Liz. But yeah, Miss Elizabeth was one of those she was way too good for this. And she had no salient purpose in pro wrestling. She was too damn good for it, man. And her death is remembered. She was 42 when she died. And it's heartbreaking because Elizabeth is another one of those. Like, my first video I did on Owen Hart. Owen Hart should still be here. Miss Elizabeth should be here with us too. But because of a scumbag piece of shit like Lex Luger, everybody's like, oh, they should arrest Lex Luger for murdering her. You can't arrest somebody for murdering somebody if they're voluntarily taking drugs. I mean, that's not murder. That's, it's not even a suicide. Some people still think that Elizabeth committed suicide. Elizabeth didn't die from suicide. She died from an accidental drug overdose. Keyword, accident. And that's just the way it is. It's unfortunate. It's sad. It's depressing. But there you go, guys. There is my thoughts on the whole Elizabeth dying. It's like I said, it's sad. It's so sad. I'm going to be 40 years old coming up in March, and some of these people that but then again, I don't do drugs. I don't drink. I might have a drink here and there, but I'm also a lot more mindful. I don't take pills when I drink because I know what that can do. But I don't know. But let me know in the comments, guys, what you thought of Miss Elizabeth, her death. Like I said, it's sad. A lot of these topics in this Do You Remember are going to be sad just because, like, some of the more shocking moments in pro wrestling history are people dying. And that's just the way of the world. It's unfortunate, but, most wrestling stories don't end with, fireworks and hoopla. They end in a lot of tragedy. I can actually think of a couple other wrestlers' suicides that I could cover as well. But like I said, you guys, any ideas you want to throw at me, please feel free to do so. I would love to hear you guys' input. So that is going to wrap up this video. Microphone keeps wanting to fall over, but that's going to wrap this part up. In the next video, I'm not sure what I'm going to do next, but I'm sure I'll come up with something for you guys, something juicy. So I love you guys so much, and I will catch you guys in the next video, guys. Take care.